Greetings! This is Will the Chill. You may know me by my legal name, Will, and today this is another episode of our weekly Perl Town Hall. Yes, this is our new weekly talk group about all things related to Perl. And I would also like to point out to everyone that we have an experimental double system today. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in a link right now for those of you who would like to join our interactive group chat. You can dial in through your telephone if you're on the go, and you should be able to hear everything we say. And also, you should be able to see a video stream on there, and you should be able to see a bunch of other people's video as well. I see Tommy Butler in Dallas. Hi, Tommy. Yes, this is a double system. We have a Facebook stream, and at the same time, we have the freeconferencecall.com with multiple video chat. So I believe that we should, in theory, be able to hear Tommy. Tommy, say hello.
Hello.
Okay, in theory, that should be picking up through the speaker to microphone interface. Very high tech. So anyway, if anybody wants to join on the video chat through the second system, free conference call, then you're free to do so, and hopefully we won't have too many people talking over each other. Hello, Luis, or Luis. Sorry, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but welcome from sunny Venezuela. Hopefully it's sunny. It's rainy and sunny at the same time here in Texas. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. If you have a chance, go ahead and join the interactive group. Otherwise, just stick with us here on the Facebook live stream. Today, we are going to talk about applications. For those of you that have not followed along our previous videos, we are reviewing the Perl Community Roadmap. So please go to perlcommunity.org, perlcommunity.org, and that should be right here. And you will be able to see several links across the top. If you click on apps, it'll scroll down to an overview, and then if you click the more info button, it'll bring you to a page that has more info. And I will, let me see, it may be possible for me to, I don't know how to share my screen on Facebook. So I'm going to just say that for now it's only my video on Facebook. But if you will please, at your own choice, follow along on perlcommunity.org, you'll see my talking points on there. And I will apologize in advance. Not all of the talking points are finished. Some of them just have an overview, but that was my own fault. I was too busy messing with the video chats to finish typing up all the notes. But don't worry, they're all in here. So again, welcome everyone. I'm Will the Chill, creator of the Perl Community Roadmap and the RPerl compiler, among other things. So we're talking about Perl applications today. Apps. I'm going to use the term apps. When I say apps, I mean any software applications. I don't just mean mobile apps. We will talk about mobile apps. That's one of the things we will talk about. But I'm using the term apps to mean all applications. Now, I should also probably mention there is a difference. Yes, thank you, Benny, for putting the link over on the free conference call. So applications, you have two different types of software, if we're going to be very high level here, very general. On one side, you have system software, and on one side, you have application software. System software is things like operating systems, programming languages, Perl, RPerl, the compilers, all of that stuff is system software. And on the other side is application software, which are what we generally consider to be programs, or as some might say differently, perhaps less correctly, programs. These are applications. They are not part of the system itself. They're part of what the user wants to interface with. So you can kind of think of it as if you only had system software, your system wouldn't do much. You have to add the applications for it to actually do something. And I know that everybody probably knew that already, but maybe some of us weren't exactly clear about system software versus application software. So today we're talking about Perl applications. The first thing I'm going to mention before we dive into our talking points is that why are applications important in general? I mean, why do we care about having Perl applications? And that's a very good question. So I'm just going to give a brief overview about that. I'm sure that that those of you who have been using computers for about 20 years or so, you may remember a time when Perl applications could be found on most all computers. Now, if you're using Linux, you probably still have Perl applications on your computer, although they may be more of hidden, but they're probably there. Unfortunately, we are all painfully aware already of the difficulties facing Perl, which is why we have the Perl Community Roadmap. And one of the main difficulties facing Perl today is the competing languages. Okay, back in the day, there was not hundreds of languages like there are now, or at least not really available like that to the general public. Nowadays, we have a lot of applications that are being written in JavaScript, Python, Java, Objective-C for like iPhone applications and stuff like that, and a bunch of other fad languages: Go, Erlang, whatever, Rust, Tool, Scrump, Blump, Loop. I don't know. Make up a word, and there's probably a language out there that is using that as its name. I mean, there's, again, hundreds of languages that you can go find and use to try and build some applications. Perl is no longer the... Yes, thank you, Tommy. I try.
Pick a word.
Pick a word. Pick a word. So I should create a language called lump. It's just like a lump of code, and you kind of run lumpy apps with it. I don't know. I'm just being silly, obviously, but we already have our language, Perl. So right now, if you were to find a cool new Perl application on CPAN, or maybe on our Facebook group, or maybe you wrote your own, and you take your new Perl app, let's say you take it to your boss or your programming buddies or your grandmother, okay? Let's just say you have this new Perl app and you're bringing it to someone to give to them. You may find yourself facing a bit of opposition. And this is, again, due to the challenges facing Perl. I've heard everything from the old cliche, I thought Perl was dead, how can you have a program in a dead language, all the way over to, wouldn't that be better to just do it in Python instead? Or I've already got some Java code that does that, and I don't need to upgrade. I mean, you've all heard different reasons why people push back against adopting new Perl applications. This is an ongoing issue for all of us. So right now, what we're trying to do with the Perl Community Roadmap is a holistic approach to trying to put Perl back on top again. And part of that holistic approach, as we're discussing today, is building a whole bunch of new Perl applications. So what kind of applications are we interested in building? Well, there's several of them. Video games, office suites, mobile tools, grand challenges, boring old server-side stuff that is still critical for lots of business infrastructure and so forth. So there's lots of different types of apps that we'll talk about. We're not talking about just any one type, okay? Any sort of Perl applications that can benefit anyone anywhere, because that will be new users that we get, new Perl users. And it will hopefully lead, as we've talked about, to new Perl jobs and new Perl money and companies and so forth. So it's not just any one type of application. It's pretty much any kind of app. Scientific applications, machine learning applications, commercial applications, corporate, everything. You name it, we want to build it. We're going to talk about them all here in a minute. How are we going to achieve this? Well, that's, of course, it's the million-dollar question for all of the parts of the Perl Community Roadmap. How in the world are we going to actually achieve this? So it's going to have to be a collection or a combination of many different strategies. It's going to have to be companies that put money to hire teams or have their existing teams build apps and then hopefully release them. It's going to have to be standalone, Lone Star, maverick programmers out there on the net somewhere that just want to whip something up and put it out. And the thing that I'm putting forth as what we should perhaps be focused on to some degree at least is that Perlmonger groups, okay? Because if we don't have Perlmonger groups anymore, we don't have anything. So we have to focus on the fact that Perlmonger groups are an important part of this plan. And each Perlmonger group should have hackathons. I mean, that's basically the bottom line is every, 6 months or so, get together and have a hackathon. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So as we've talked about in the past, we have a lot of very pie in the sky goals, okay, that maybe seem like they're somewhat out of reach. Our goal for this one is to have Perl apps on every digital device on Earth. Yes, Perl apps on every device in the world and in outer space and wherever. And I know that most of you are probably thinking again, wow, that's too much, we're not going to achieve that or whatever. I know it's a very grandiose goal. It's a very big thing that we're trying to achieve here. And again, shoot for the moon. Shoot for the moon. If you hit it, great. Then we've got Perl apps on every device. If you don't hit your target, you land among the stars. So anyway, that's what we're trying to do. So that's kind of the overview of why we think apps are important and in generally how we want to approach this. So let's go on here and talk a little bit about the different types of apps that we want to work on, because there are several different types. I'll start by mentioning that the apps that we're talking about on these lists are kind of the ones that are not focused on currently. I will talk a little bit about server-side apps, but most Perl apps are server-side apps. That's what we need to all kind of understand. Yes, there are some desktop apps that grandma can use in Perl, but not very many. Most of us that work as Perl programmers work on a cloud server or on a corporate server of some kind, and our apps are utilized maybe through a web interface or through a command line, or maybe they don't even have much of an interface. It's like parsing log data or doing some email stuff or whatever. So those kind of applications are not our focus. We will talk about them, but they're not our focus because they are low visibility. What we want to have and what we need to have and what this whole application thing we're talking about is focused on is high visibility applications, because that is what we believe will draw more attention to what we're doing. Obviously, high visibility things draw more attention. So we need to kind of look at the areas that do not have enough attention right now, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I will now take a brief 10-second commercial to say again hello to everyone who's here. Welcome. We've got people from all around the world as usual. I'd like to say hello to Kurt Steinmetz, Tommy Butler, my dear Benny Braswell, Mr. Mokapati, Mr. Persico. Hello, Prakash. Good to see you, sir. Programs. Hello, Chris Jack and Isaac Close. Yes, Perl apps on all devices. Yes, exactly. For those of you that aren't already on the interactive, you can go look at the links at the top, and it should give you a link to the interactive Perl conference call. It's on freeconferencecall.com, and it's called Perl Town Hall. So this is our brief commercial for Patreon. Yes, that's right. If you're listening to this right now, we sure could use your support because this is community-funded content and community-funded software here for our Perl, for the Perl Town Hall, for ML Perl, the Perl Community Roadmap, the compiler. Everything we're doing is because of you. So if you are not already a Patreon supporter, we would greatly appreciate it if you just go ahead and click on over to patreon.com/rperl. So moving on, the first apps that we're going to talk about today are video games. That's really cool. Fun. Video games. Everybody loves video games. There's so much money in video games. It's insane. Just go look on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and find the latest video games on there, and you will see they're hundreds of thousands of dollars funding them, if not millions, that people just, for any little thing that could be, lump the video game. It's $2 million on Kickstarter. Okay, wow. It's lump the game for $2 million. Okay, I guess Perl needs to get in on that action then, because we are essentially about 50 miles away from the video game market right now with Perl, and that's not good. We need to start moving towards the video game market at the very least. And actually, I have a presentation that has not been given yet, but it has been submitted for potential presentation. That is called "Can Perl Create Video Games?" Can you use Perl to create video games? Good question, Will. Let's see. What's the answer? Well, it's a complicated answer. I would say the short answer is no, but I know you guys love that. And the long answer is yes, if. So the short answer is no, but we can hopefully soon in the near future. The long answer is yes, if we focus on getting high-speed graphics implemented with the R Perl compiler. And I've already started on this. I've gotten 1 or 2 little graphical demos working. And we use SDL, which is not scene description language. That's a different SDL. We're talking about Simple Direct Media Layer, SDL. That is a library available on CPAN for Perl, and you can use it to output any graphics of your choice to a window interface. Now, it's not a GUI toolkit with buttons and slide scroll bars and all that. This is just a raw graphic. So if you want to render a video game, then this is what you need, the SDL, Simple Direct Media Layer. So I have been able to show, and it works quite well, that you can Okay, got you, Tommy. I understand. Thank you. You can combine the simple direct media layer, SDL, with the RPerl compiler. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're not trying to compile SDL itself because it's already like a C library or whatever. It's just there's a Perl interface to that C library that we can call from our video game driver. So imagine you have a .pl file. We'll call that our video game driver. That's running through the Perl interpreter. That's the very topmost thing. Part of that calls over to SDL, which then in turn calls to the C, SDL underlying C libraries. And then the other part calls to RPerl, and that is also compiled into C++. So the SDL part is really just graphical output, essentially. And the RPerl compiling part is where you're actually rendering the graphics, moving the sprites around, doing 3D rendering or whatever. Tommy Butler says, I love video games as an idea. Adigun Timothy says, hope you'll talk about phone apps too. I will. Stay tuned. Mobile apps are on the list. We're going to talk about it in a few minutes. Isaac Close says, yes. And Tommy Butler says, let's make SPDL and call it Speedle. Oh boy, I'm sure the Perl data language people will love that. Anyway, we don't talk about that right now. So back to video games and SDL. Essentially, you can hook up SDL as your front end to dump out the graphics, and you can hook up RPerl as your back end to do the rendering and all of the math and programming of the game graphic, the computationally intensive portions of the game and the graphics. That is the architecture of how you build a video game in RPerl. You've got your driver at the top, that's interpreted PL file. You've got your RPerl over here doing the compiled graphics, rendering, math, and so forth. And you've got your SDL over here that's dumping out the graphics through a C library. That's it. That's all you need. You got the Perl interpreter at the top, you got your SDL on one side, and your Perl on the other side. RPerl on the other side. That's how you can and should, and it's the only way I know of that you can build a video game in Perl. Now, you could build a game that you don't care about the speed, but that wouldn't really help us very much because we obviously care very much about the speed of the video games. If our video games don't run fast, then people probably won't be interested in them. Nowadays, video games are among the most computationally intensive consumer applications. And in fact, people build custom computers all the time just to run the latest video games. Well, great. Then let's pander to that and get some of that video game money. And we can do that if we use the Perl compiler and we use SDL. Combine those two things together. What else about video games? Let's see. What else about video games? Started in 1972. Pong was the first big video game. This is a really fun thing that will bring together friends and family members. I personally don't play really much video games anymore. I used to play a lot as a kid. Then I started programming and I built my first 3D first-person video game, and at that point I was like, well, video games have lost their magic to me because now I'm a programmer instead. I know a lot of programmers didn't experience that and they still love video games. I do still play video games once a year, and that is usually during Christmas time when me and my brother and other family members will get together and have a fun time. We either playing Guitar Hero or Band Hero or Ninja Turtles or whatever our games are that year. So basically, this is an opportunity to bring together friends and family members that otherwise might not have experienced that. Nowadays, the modern games do really require a lot of 3D rendering, and people expect to see 3D graphics. If you want to do a two-dimensional side-scroller, okay, but it has to be something really unique and special to be special, because everything is kind of 3D now. Really, over the last decade, there's been no successful games built in Perl. There was a game called Tux Racer that came out quite a number of years ago, and that was a cool game. And that's pretty much the only game that I could name in Perl. That's it. If you know of other games, please let me know. Isaac says, I would hope a simple 2D game could run on a modern device with just Perl 5 and SDL. Yes, if you're running it on a desktop computer and you're writing all of your graphic code in uncompiled Perl 5, or as we just call it now, Perl, then yes, you should be able to build a side-scrolling 2D game without compiling Perl on a modern, fast desktop computer. Now, I will say that's limiting enough to be not what we are focused on trying to do. We, as mentioned, are trying to go for the high-speed, high graphics, high-dollar video game market. And to do that, you do need to be able to render 3D graphics. Isaac says Tux Racer was written in Perl. And unless I am fibbing to you, I do believe that is correct. I'm going to double check that right now. Let's see, Tux Racer. Well, I can't find what language it was written in. Okay, we'll have to go back to that. I'm pretty sure Tux Racer was written in Perl. I could be wrong. Oh, here it is on SourceForge. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, yes. So basically, we're looking for 3D games, something that can run super fast. Lewis says games like Stardew Valley are amazing. I am not familiar with Stardew Valley. I'm looking it up right here, and we'll see what it is. Okay, it's a type of 2D game. It looks almost like kind of a Zelda type game where you're looking at a sort of a bird's eye view. Okay, cool. So yes, you certainly can build 2D games that still may be popular. It's simply that that we want to be able to have the option of building those really high-tech, futuristic 3D games as well. So, anywho, back to our main talking points here. We want to go in the direction, as mentioned, with 3D graphics, but not just regular 3D graphics. We want to have ray tracing graphics, which is in use in a few modern video games, I believe. I am not up to date on all my video game news, but ray tracing and volumetric tracing and volumetric rendering are among the most, if not the most, computationally intense graphical rendering processes, at least that I'm aware of. And you probably don't need the volumetric rendering for what a game would require. That's mostly used for actual physics and medical simulations. Most video games are good enough if you can just know what the surface of an object looks like. You don't need to know what the inside of it exactly contains. So for that, we can use simply the ray tracing. And that is something that I'm working on using, of course, the RPerl compiler, working on a ray tracing engine that could be used for high-speed rendering, whether that be for video games or for other stuff like movie special effects or just desktop effects, what have you. Something that needs extremely ultra realistic graphics and can be done at a very high speed. So you would have to have RPerl for that. You would not really be able to use regular Perl, interpreted Perl, if you're trying to do ray tracing. It would be like 100 times too slow. The other thing that we need for video games is simulated physics. Pretty much all video games that have some like characters moving around in some way have to have some physics simulations. And that way, you know, if your character jumps, he lands again. Or if your character swims through water, then the tide can push you one way or the other. These are all physics simulations that are implemented through a physics engine. And that's one of the things that we have to go along with our ray tracing engine is a physics engine. So that's a whole other ball of wax that I've kind of started looking at a little bit, but I definitely would need help with that. Our goal here is essentially to have major video game companies adopting Perl. Let's have you know, Nintendo or Sony PlayStation or Xbox or whatever, all of these different major video game groups, Steam, that like the online games, PC games, downloadable computer games, arcade games, whatever, all the different styles of video game. Okay, so Tux Racer is C only. Well, I must have misremembered that. Thank you for reminding me, Isaac. Yes, I had assumed that at least part of it was written in C because it's got some 3D graphics in there. So then I cannot name any graphical video games written in Perl. There is a text-based video game that Curtis Ovid Poe has been working on, Tau Station or Tau SETI, something like that. I'm sure you can Google it and find access to that game, but as far as I understand, it is not a graphical game in the sense of moving characters and so forth. It's kind of a text-based adventure game that may have still shots or cutscenes and stuff like that. What we're talking about are interactive 3D characters where, you know, it can be a virtual reality, put on the goggles, and you can interface with it, all that kind of stuff. Super fast 3D graphics. That's what we're talking about. Hello, Nick Boosigan, sorry. I'm sure I am slaughtering everyone's names. Welcome, Nick. We're just talking about video game development in Perl. So I'll finish up the talk about video games by just reminding us that there's really no major video games written in Perl, and the only way we can achieve the really high-speed 3D graphics is if we have a new ray tracing engine, a new physics engine, and compile it all with RPerl. And I would suggest then running it out through the SDL, Simple Direct Media Layer, library from CPAN. So that's my overview of video games. Now, there are a number of other topics to touch on for applications. I'm not going to spend as much time talking about them, but there are several more important things to consider. These are types of applications we're talking about at this time. So next we're going to mention, just for a few minutes, the possibility of building a Perl Office suite. Now, I think many of us are probably familiar with LibreOffice, formerly OpenOffice, I believe formerly WordPerfect. It's hard for me to exactly trace the lineage of that project, but I know that I use LibreOffice all the time, every day, for office and business purposes. It has a presentation, it has spreadsheets, it has documents, all the main things you need. Obviously, those of you stuck in a Microsoft platform are probably using Microsoft Office with Word and PowerPoint and Excel. And then there's probably the equivalent in Macintosh and whatever else. So what we're looking at here is the equivalent functionality. Let's just say porting LibreOffice to Perl. The reason I say that is because I'm not sure if the smartest idea is to create a totally new Office suite from scratch in Perl, or if it's smarter to take what we already have with LibreOffice and port that over. And as far as I understand, LibreOffice, I believe, is written in C and Java. Have not looked at the source code, but that's what I have been given to understand. I'm guessing Isaac is going to double check me on that and let us know if I'm wrong. So we could try to maybe take parts of LibreOffice and convert them to compiled Perl using our Perl, wherever that is. There it is. I don't know how effective that would be, but it certainly is worth looking at. And if it turns out that it's too much trouble to convert an entire Office suite over, then we could look at starting over from scratch. And that's something that is also certainly a possibility. Now, a lot of people may be saying, you know, why in the world would you want to create a new Office suite? We already have LibreOffice and Microsoft Office and so forth. Well, it's the same reason why we would want to create new video games in Perl or new anything in Perl, because it's a way to promote Perl. If we had perloffice.com or .org or whatever, and that was running a live version of a totally compatible Office suite, and you could load up anything from Microsoft or anything from LibreOffice, that would be pretty sweet. I mean, that would be something where we could really be shouting that from the rooftops, you know, Perl Office, it's a thing. Well, right now it doesn't exist, and it won't exist unless there's a group of Perl mongers that really gets on fire about wanting to do that, and let's get together and make it happen. So I will not be the only one working on any of these apps, and I certainly won't be the only one or even the main one working on Perl Office. But nevertheless, it is something that is on the radar and could bring us a lot of attention if we did. Okay, Isaac, if you don't want to error check me on this one, that's just fine. We'll assume that I'm correct. Okay, so that's some comments about the Office suite. Now, let's talk for a minute about mobile apps, phone apps, mobile tools, whatever you want to call it. This was something that we had someone asking about that, Adigun Timothy. So, yes, we have mobile apps on our list of things that we want to work on, the types of apps that we want to work on. Mobile apps are definitely one of the types of apps that we need to work on. And this is also one of these sort of pretty complicated situations where how do you make Perl apps for the mobile device? And there's another talk that I haven't presented yet or even exactly finished writing up, but you know, can Perl create mobile apps? Question mark. Well, can it? How would you do it? The answer is, I believe that there have been some attempts to build a Perl SDK, software development kit, for mobile apps. I don't believe that anyone's worked on that in a number of years, and I also don't believe that that it is working at this time, or I don't even know if it ever worked because I've never seen a Perl mobile app. I will say that it is possible. Okay, so remember the short answer, no with a but, long answer, yes with an if. So can Perl create mobile apps? No, not right now, but we may be able to at some point. Again, thanks to your trusty R Perl compiler. This is because the long answer would be yes if we get R Perl linked in to the cell phone libraries. And right now, from what I am given to understand, the software written for Android devices is sort of a Java-based thing, and the software written for iPhones is kind of an Objective-C based platform. Now, again, I'm no expert in either of these two platforms. Isaac says it was SL4A, and it gave limited access to the Android API. Yeah, so it was probably an Android-only solution, and it required some software that's probably no longer being maintained. So we would need to build some kind of unified Perl system, a library, a framework, I don't know what, but something that allows Perl to run on both Android and on iPhone. And God forbid there should be another third platform that is not controlled by Google or Apple. Now, I use an old Android phone because it's the only thing I can get that does what I want it to do. But I am looking forward to the day, someday not too far in the distant future, when we may have cell phones that are not locked down by Java and Objective-C and commercial corporations that are trying to essentially control our means of communication. What I would love to see is a comeback for the Ubuntu phone, the Linux phone, any type of Linux-powered phone. Because if we had a Linux-powered phone, it would solve a lot of problems. First of all, we could compile R Perl straight onto the device, because we just need anything that will load up C++ code, and Clang should be able to do that for us, or GCC, and get it to compile onto the device. It would also solve the issues of Android and iPhone apps, because you can run Android and iPhone SDK emulators inside of Linux and then run those apps. So you would be able to run any Android app, any iPhone app, and our new high-speed R Perl apps. That would be possible on a new Linux phone. And I am looking into the possibility of creating such a thing. If you are interested in any of these projects, please let me know, and I'll add you to the various groups and lists and so forth that has to do with each project. We have another comment from Isaac. The Android NDK works with C++, no problems. But I don't know, he says, I don't know about iOS. iOS, the problem seems to be jumping through hoops to get on the Apple App Store. Yes, well, the Android App Store, I believe you also have to jump through some amount of hoops, but not as many. And Apple just wants to be like super stranglehold on the application market. They turn people down for no reason. Like a perfectly good application that somebody spent a long time and money to design, and then it's just, oh, sorry, we're not going to put it on the App Store. You're out of luck. I'm not particularly interested in spending additional time building out additional code in order to get it turned down. What I would like to have, as I mentioned, is a Perl framework or library of some kind where we can just write up some pure Perl code with a little front end through SDL or, again, whatever we need for graphics, and then that can run somehow on both Android and Apple. And I'm not sure how we would exactly accomplish that. We would have to have our own special system to accomplish that. And it would be really great. And Isaac says, yes, this is a big problem. So I don't know. Any of you out there that may be mobile application experts, please let me know. I'm guessing that we will need someone who knows a lot about Android and someone who knows a lot about iPhones, because I'm not an expert on either of them. I just know about the Perl compiler. So I do know that we can probably interface through Clang and maybe, again, GCC. I don't know. That's the tricky part. So moving on, mobile apps, that's a little bit further down the road, but we will get there. And I'm just going to put this out there. Perl phone. Perl phone. Okay? Okay. Stay tuned. Moving on, the next type of apps that we'll mention, and we're coming close to the end of our weekly hour or so, is we're going to talk about server-side apps. This is really most existing Perl applications are server-side apps, okay? And again, as mentioned, this is essentially like some code that's running on a server in a company or on the cloud or wherever, and either you're using a web interface or you're using like a command line interface, or maybe it doesn't even have much of an interface because it's just running in the background. These all are essentially a type of server-side applications. They're not desktop apps, they're not mobile apps, they're not video games. Not any of that stuff. These are what most normal humans would consider to be either invisible or boring, or both. And it's also what I think pays most of the money for most programmers to survive. And I know for myself, I write a lot of server-side code. I have for many years, and I think many programmers in Perl are doing the same thing, because Perl never made it big on the desktop. Perl never made it big in video games or graphics or front-end user interfaces or the desktop fun stuff that people see and care about. Perl never made it big on those things. So we should care about server apps, because without them, that's our bread and butter. That's kind of our our last strong foundation that it's hard to shake us from server-side apps. There's so much Perl running on so many servers in the whole world that we'll always have a job. That we talked about the whole Perl legacy thing on one of our previous episodes. Perl is a legacy language. There's Perl code so much in so many places that there will always be at least small jobs for Perl programmers. Whether for better or worse, that is a strength of Perl at this time. Now, why do we care about server apps? What are we going to do about server apps? I mean, really, the main thing here is to just kind of keep doing what we're doing. Just keep maintaining the server apps. Keep upgrading them to run on the new cloud platforms, the new Docker and Kubernetes platforms. Keep upgrading your apps. Keep using the latest and greatest Perl technologies and non-Perl technologies, and keep Perl relevant in the server-side application industry. And that's something that we can't afford to lose, because if we do, that will be the final end of Perl at that time, and we don't want that to happen, and we don't think that can happen anyway because of the whole legacy application thing. But what can happen is that Perl can dwindle to a non-recoverable position, and that's a no-no. That's what we're trying to avoid here. So keep doing what we're good at, which is server-side apps, and start working on the stuff that we're really no good at right now, like video games or mobile apps. And that's kind of the strategy. After mobile apps and server apps, let's talk briefly about one more type of apps, and then we'll talk about hackathons, and that will be the end of our chat for today. Grand challenges. Grand challenges. What is a grand challenge? Why should we care? Grand challenges are big. Grand challenges are perhaps among the most important things on Earth. Grand challenges are the biggest, grandest challenges that we have in the whole world. Fighting hunger, curing disease, flying cars, an end to suffering and greed, housing for all, genetic medicine, outer space exploration, high-speed propulsion, free energy, energy to matter replication, faster than light communication, life extension technologies. There's just, I mean, the list is tremendous. I have personally my private list, not yet published, of grand challenge problems, and it's almost 100 of them. And yes, they are organized into some general groups. Isaac says, we need to make Perl cool again. Yes, that's true. Perl used to be very cool back in the 90s and early 2000s, and all of the cool kids were doing it. And now it's kind of like the old, grumpy, nerdy guys with big beards and bad breath. You know, it's a negative coolness at this point. Now, I like to think of myself as a pretty cool guy, but, you know, that's up for discussion. Some people may look at me and be like, white and nerdy, white and nerdy. Okay, I'll also accept that, but I like to think I'm cool for a white and nerdy guy. And that's possible. I mean, if you look at the entire programming industry, there are certainly those that are on the more cool end of the spectrum, and there are those that are on the more nerdy end of the spectrum. And we do want to try and be more on the cool end of the spectrum because for better or worse, again, the cool kids are essentially the younger generation, the teenagers and the hipsters, and these the skinny jeans and the latte frappe, double venti frappuccinos. These are the next generation of programmers that have primarily been using Python or JavaScript or something, and not Perl. And we do need to appeal to them because we've kind of left them out in a way, and we're not cool anymore. We're not cool to them, and we're hardly cool to ourselves, with the exception again of yours truly. Wink, wink. But yeah, we do have to make Perl cool again. We need to put Perl back on top. That's kind of our catchphrase, our slogan, our motto, if you will, for the Perl Community Roadmap. So anyway, back to the grand challenges. Thank you, Isaac, for your input. I appreciate that. So there's almost 100. Let's just round it up to 100 grand challenge problems. And this is in all different categories: medicine, technology, science, exploration, all the different fields of science, geology, biology, chemistry, physics, every different field of human endeavor has some grand challenges associated with it. And that's really, this is where we start talking about sort of the future of humanity. What is the future of humanity? Is Perl a part of that in any way? Well, our beloved founder and leader, Saint Larry, also known as Larry Wall, he decided that Raku, his new language, formerly known as Perl 6, would be a 100-year language. And so he wanted to make the language flexible enough or futuristic enough to last 100 years. And he may well succeed, if only that the language itself is complicated enough that it will take 100 years to really make it run fast and sort of do what it's supposed to ultimately do. And one of the quotes about Raku and Perl is, will Raku ever replace Perl? And St. Larry says, sure, maybe in about 40 years or so. It may or may not take more or less than 40 years. I really don't know. And I'm not a Raku programmer. I'm a Perl programmer. But I will say, first of all, I applaud St. Larry for his forward-looking attitude. First of all, that is what we need. And secondly, I would say that we need Perl, not Raku. That's a separate thing. Not addressing it. That's fine if you like Raku, go ahead. But we need Perl to be a 300-year language. That means we need to have a compiler that can run on all the new parallel systems and quantum computers and so forth. It means that we need to have machine learning libraries that are faster than everything else in existence. It means that we need to have even video games or mobile apps and all these things we're talking about now. And it especially means that we need to address the grand challenge problems. And that's what we're talking about right now. Because if we don't solve these grand challenge problems, someone else will, first of all, and they won't be using Perl, except maybe the BioPerl people. And you'll probably want to rewind and go back to my BioPerl talk from a few weeks ago, and you'll realize that should be called BioC because it's mostly C code with a wrapper of Perl. So if we aren't the ones trying proactively to get Perl put into these grand challenge situations, then it's just not going to happen. And we'll see discovery after discovery after discovery being made with non-Perl software. And we'll see, Python wins again. World's greatest chemistry discovery of the century. Flubber, simulated by Python code, changes the world. Let's try to avoid that. We really want Perl to be the code that's running to create these grand challenge solutions to the grand challenge problems. And also, in order to achieve that, we're going to have to be partnered up with other institutions, universities, corporations, nonprofit groups, individual research labs, private scientific groups, whomever that may be, wherever the brains are that have that knowledge, that's the domain-specific expertise to build the new thing, whatever that grand challenge may be. Each individual grand challenge will have a different group that's working on it, and we will have to approach each one of those groups one by one by one by one by one, all the way across the board. There's going to be hundreds of groups, and we have to get them all. We have to go talk to them all. We have to find out what they need, and we have to somehow help them do it. even giving them free code and free work. Hello, Detlev. Good to see you. Housechild. I'm sorry. Again, butchering last names, but welcome. We're just talking about grand challenge problems. So welcome to our Perl Town Hall Weekly, and we're talking about solving the world's grand challenge problems with Perl. So this is going to require, again, the Perl monger groups to mobilize, and you know, something that will take us into many places that Perl has not gone before. Sounds familiar? Maybe from one of my favorite future-listening TV shows that's all about looking into the future. What are they going to create next? What's going to happen in 300 years? What kind of software is going to be running the computers and the engines and the simulation software for the future spacecraft? Well, if we have a 300-year program and a 300-year language and a 300-year plan, it could be Perl. Okay, Mark says, hi Mark Swain, and hi Detlev. Mark says, I see lots of discussion of Python as being unacceptable now because it's bad at parallelism. Well, I should mention the RPerl compiler. It includes automatic parallelization of any applicable loop structure. And this is using the polytope mathematics, which is a little bit beyond me, but it's a very advanced mechanism of searching out a sort of multidimensional problem space for loops to find out how they can be parallelized. And that's done not only in some interpreted form of Perl, which would kind of be like running a whole bunch of slow things all at once, but no, we're compiling, as you know, to C++, and then parallelizing those ultra-fast threads. So you're having a whole load of parallel super high-speed applications running, and that is what gives us the ultimate speed. So hopefully that is going to be the thing that can knock out punch with Python and put us on top with ML Perl and the grand challenges. Let's see. Okay, Detlev gives me his last name. I don't read exactly how to pronounce that. I'm guessing it's Hauschilt. I'm guessing Hauschilt. Mark says, asynchronization and parallelism are key for Perl's future. Exactly. And we will have a whole talk and demos and everything just about that. And on that note, before I forget, please, if you have not already, go to our patreon.com/rperl. This is our brief 15-second commercial for Patreon, because this is unpaid content. That's right. If you go to patreon.com/rperl, you too can become a proud supporter of the Perl Town Hall. Plus, the RPerl compiler and ML Perl, Machine Learning Perl, Perl Community Roadmap, all of these free services that we are bringing to you, the Perl community. So please, 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 we're begging you nicely to go sign up on Patreon. Yes, we definitely have to have parallelism. That is why I built parallelism into the R compiler. Okay, so grand challenge problems, okay, there's about 100 of them. Each one of them can just change the whole world, and we've got to do them all, okay? Whatever each person's expertise is, that's what we need you to work on. So, you know, if I'm going to focus on astrophysics in the future, then I will take some amount of ownership and responsibility for the astrophysics grand challenge problems. And I'll network with all of the other scientists working on astrophysics stuff, and find out which of them is the smartest and which of them is working on the most important Grand Challenge projects, and then offer our services, offer the ability to, try and support their projects in some way, give them free code, give them discount code, whatever it is that they need to solve their Grand Challenge problems. We have another question here by a Dave McIntyre. Raku doing parallelism. Well, sure, you can use Raku if you want to do parallelism. I should warn you that interpreted Perl is at the bottom of the performance speed list, and interpreted Raku is not even on the list. It's far below the bottom. So again, you're pretty much talking about running a whole bunch of parallel things that are each super slow. And you would be better off just writing one tiny serial loop in C and just letting it run on one core, because it would probably be faster. So, not trying to knock Raku, but it's not ready yet, man. I mean, I don't even know when Raku's going to be ready yet. If you're trying to do high-performance parallel computing, you can use C and manually parallelize it, or you can use RPerl and it will compile to C++ and parallelize it for you. Perl itself has had lots of problems trying to support native parallelism and native threads and so forth. I don't even care about that or try or bother with it, because again, you're running a bunch of interpreted things in parallel. Slow stuff, a bunch of slow things is not equal to a fast thing. It may be less slow than one slow thing, but what we need is a bunch of fast things. And you won't get that by parallelizing an interpreter. You're not going to get that from Raku, and you're not going to get that from regular interpreted Perl. You're going to have compiled Perl, and you're going to have automatic parallelism to not spend the whole rest of your life manually parallelizing one algorithm. So, sorry, Dave, but no, I don't think you want Raku if you care about speed and parallelism. Now, if you don't care about speed and you just want experimental parallelism, then yes, go for Raku. But I'm talking about commercially viable production level code. No, not even close. Hello, James Patty. Thank you for joining us. We're nearing the end of our approximately 1 hour long Perl Town Hall. If you have not already seen the entire thing, you can rewind when we're done and watch the beginning. So thank you all for joining us. Now, we do one more topic for discussion tonight, and this is hackathons. That's right, hackathons. What is a hackathon, you may ask? Well, a hackathon is essentially a group of people that gets together either in person or over the internet, and essentially focuses for a relatively short period of time on some software development goal. So that goal could be to fix one bug, and you have a hackathon to fix one big nasty bug. It could be to implement one single feature. You could have a hackathon, that goes late on a Friday night just to implement one feature. We also see at the Perl conferences, there's a hackathon room, and it's an ongoing, 24/7 or at least until midnight or a bit later hackathon that has a special room set aside, and it's just people set up with computers hacking on their code. Now, for those of you that may be wondering, does the word hacking mean that you're trying to bypass somebody's security? Not in this connotation, not in this context. That would be the term crack. A computer cracker is someone who breaks into a computer system illegally. And we're not trying to do that. There are also legal computer crackers that are hired by a corporation perhaps to secure their own network. And that would be sort of black hat versus white hat hacking, but again, cracking to use the more specific terminology. When we say hackathon, or I'm just another Perl hacker, JAPH, or let's hack on this code together, that just means writing code together. Now, I will also, for the sake of completeness, mention that there is another slightly less common use of the term hacking that also has to do with computer programming, and it means programming on some code base with little to no direction or knowledge of what you're doing. And that's also kind of not what we mean. We're hoping that people at a hackathon, or at least at a Perl hackathon, will have some idea of what they're trying to do. And they're like, seasoned Perl programmers, or at least newbies that are being mentored by some experienced guys. And that they're not just sort of randomly typing code to see what it will do. That's kind of what the older usage of the term hacking meant. And yes, I have been accused of just hacking on code once or twice when I was a kid. But I was actually a kid, so it was probably okay. Anyway, a hackathon is a very popular event in the Perl community, and it can be something that's a lot of fun, in fact. Okay, let's back up. Sorry, Luis has a question. I'm new in games and rendering. SDL works. It doesn't matter of the OS. Okay, it's SDL, simple direct media layer, not T as in Thomas, D as in David, SDL. And I believe that it is operating system independent, so it should work on something other than Linux. I only use Linux. I only recommend Linux. I only support Linux. If you choose to use an operating system other than Linux, it is at your own risk and peril as a developer. I do not believe it is a smart move for a software developer to use a non-Linux operating system. That being said, you should be able to use most Perl code and most C code and most Perl to C connection code in any operating system that has a good C compiler. Now, that may or may not include your proprietary operating system, because many proprietary operating systems simply do not have good support for writing your own code or compiling complex C code. And that's something that is an ongoing struggle for all of us developers in the whole world. Hello, Camille! Good to see you, sir. Camille is one of the original creators of the parsing code used in the RPerl compiler. So that's the yet another compiler generalization that we have in Perl that we use for compiling the RPerl compiler code. Thank you for joining us, Camille. So Luis has another question. Even Strawberry Perl? Strawberry Perl is probably the best option for running Perl in a Microsoft environment. I do not use Microsoft myself. I have used AppVeyor for testing, and we do use Strawberry Perl in AppVeyor. I will also say that you might use Cygwin. That's like a more expensive Unix type environment if you're having a hard time getting stuff to compile through Strawberry Perl. But if you have Strawberry and GCC working together, it might work. Otherwise, you might need to upgrade to Cygwin. Otherwise, you might need to do a real upgrade to a real operating system. Sorry, no offense. I'm just saying. If you choose to use a proprietary operating system, you are choosing to give yourself more challenges. And that's a choice that I do not personally make. Mark says SDL is cross-platform. Thank you, Mark, for answering our question. You get a gold star. Any answers that come, but I don't have to look them all up myself in real time, is awesome. So back to hackathons. I can wrap up for the day. Hackathons. We need every Perlmonger group to have regular hackathons. That means at least every other quarter, which is twice a year. It would be good if you had them every quarter. I'm working on it with the Austin Perl Mongers. We're not quite there yet with every quarter, but we should be. And it's incumbent upon me as the president of the Austin Perl Mongers to make that happen. And it's incumbent upon all of y'all in your Perl Monger groups, and if you don't have one, you need to create one for your hometown. You need to set up Perl Hackathons as well. And the reason we need to do this is so that each Perl Monger group can choose one or two or maybe 3 projects, but probably just 1 or 2, to focus on for the next couple years and adopt that project. That becomes your project. You take ownership. You take responsibility. Your Perl Mongers group now has a thing to work on. You have a thing to focus on. Okay? You're no longer just meeting for beer and hangout time and complaining time. Now you're actually writing Perl code. You're getting jazzed up. You're getting excited. You're getting focused, and you're creating new Perl products. That's what we need. Perl apps. Perl application software. We need cool stuff built in Perl. And you can do that. You can be the one to do that if you have regular hackathons. So please work within your Perl community, within your Perl Mongers group, to have regular hackathons. And I will help you. Benny will help you. We will help you organize hackathons. We're putting together a guide for how to have a successful hackathon. You can use that guide. You can change it. You can modify it. You can make your own up. All you got to do is get some people together, get some pizza and Mountain Dew, and let them go. And let's build some stuff and get it up on GitLab and get it up on CPAN when it's ready and send it out to the Perl group on Facebook and tell me about it, and we'll have you on this show, Perl Town Hall, and I will interview you personally on the video here so everyone can hear about your cool new Perl project, whatever that may be. If it's anywhere even close to the scope of these things that we're talking about in the Perl Community Roadmap, which I'm sure it would be, because how could it not be, then we want you to come on this show. We want you to show us what you're working on and all the cool things that you are excited about. So that's about it. To recap, applications. We need applications if Perl is going to survive, if we're going to get new users. We want to build video games. We want to build office business software. We want to build mobile apps. We want to build more server-side apps and maintain the ones we already have. We really want to solve grand challenge problems and change the whole world. And we need to have hackathons in order to make it happen. So let's make it happen. I challenge each of you to begin your planning to have a hackathon within the next few months. By the time the summer rolls around, sometime this summer, you should be having a hackathon with your local Perl Mongers group. And if you don't have a Perl Mongers group, talk to me and we'll help you get one set up. So, with that, this is Will the Chill Braswell with the Perl Town Hall meeting saying, keep Perling, keep writing Perl code, and remember that Perl is really cool. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for your input. And this is Will the Chill signing off. Until next week, stay Perling. And